What is going on, everybody? How we doing? Welcome back to the Georgia Math Show. Today, you guys, we got a good episode. We got many things to talk about. A lot of stuff happened this past week that I need to touch on, have to have a conversation on, touch bases on. LeBron informed the Lakers that he's opting out. Steve Cohen got on a podcast with John Heyman, and he spoke a little bit. Eric Chavez came on a podcast talking about Mets situation with David Stearns and Juan Soto. We'll touch about, and we'll also speak about a little bit of some of the trades that happened in the league, where Kawhi got traded to the Raptors and Jaylen Brown to Philly. So before we start, like I say every single time, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, comment down below your thoughts and opinion about every single thing that we talk about. Let's get into it. All right, so you guys know we always start off with a positive vibe segment every single time. Words of wisdom, look at it as a motivation for the day. Let's jump into it. Here's a quote for today. It is okay not to have it all figured out. You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step. That is a quote from the great Martin Luther King Jr., you guys. Love that quote. Very inspirational, very motivational for the day. You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take it one step at a time. Not everybody's going to have it figured out. Remember that. All right, let's get started with Mr. LeBron James, you guys. So, LeBron James has had informed the Lakers that he will not be returning to the team. The team has already released a statement thanking him for his 8 years in the 2020 championship, with LeBron replying, "Thank you to the organization for the, stint, whatever it is." He plans to hit the open market and play a record-extending 24th NBA season elsewhere. So many of you guys are probably asking, why is he moving on from the Lakers? Think about it. Bronny's still there. He has probably hella businesses in LA. His house is in there. His family's there, etc. The reason why is the Lakers recently made a massive franchise pivot by trading for Luka Doncic, with the front office officially shifting their focus and finances to build a long-term roster around Luka. The dynamic in LA changed. According to reports, LeBron, who turns 42 in December, wants to spend his 24th season playing meaningful competitive basketball. He likely felt like his immediate championship window didn't align with a roster resetting around a new, younger centerpiece. So, essentially, he just feels like the Lakers aren't going to be competitive. Obviously, you probably see teams like the Spurs, OKC, maybe Houston, who, as time goes by, are going to get better and better. So he thinks, the Lakers still have work to do, and he wants to be competitive, it looks like. He also, I think it was it was obvious that, especially once the Lakers made the trade for Luka, that they were, planning on a different road. Which, listen, as a front office perspective, when you take a look at it, it makes sense. Think about it. LeBron is 42. Eventually, he's going to retire. You want to build around the young cat, Luka. Luka's young. He's going to be here for another 10, 15 years, possibly. You want to build around him. You don't want to build around a team that has an aging LeBron James. That really doesn't make sense. Now, LeBron is still great. Don't get me wrong. But age is age. He's getting older. When eventually he's going to retire. Why build around a team where you got an aging LeBron who you don't know if tomorrow he decides to retire? It's like one of those things. Now, what about Bronny? As you guys know, I did mention Bronny a little bit. So despite LeBron exiting, he is staying put. His contract with the Lakers just became fully guaranteed for $2.3 million for the up-and-coming 2026-2027 season, after seeking some rotation minutes and making playoff appearances the past spring. The Lakers are keeping him in the development plans rather than waiving him to follow his dad. So Lakers look like they're interested in keeping Bronny and seeing what he could do. So let's talk about, my opinion, teams that I think he's going to go to. Right now, because I've seen it. I've been seeing it. If you follow me on Instagram, I posted it a little bit. His top destination spots that they're saying, which I think is Philly, Cavs, Warriors, and Miami. So I'm gonna notch it down to three teams. This is the three teams I feel like LeBron's gonna either go to: Cavs, Heat, or Warriors. Now I'm gonna start off with the Warriors, and I think I've said this in the past a little bit. Why I think he may go to Golden State. This is the Warriors seems to be generating the most smoke. Obviously, Draymond Green opted out of his $27.6 million contract to give the Warriors a roster flexibility to make a major move. Joining forces with Curry, Green, and Kerr for one final run would be massive, league shifting storyline. So, if you guys don't know, one of the things that LeBron's always said is that he wants to play with Steph Curry. Now, this is his opportunity. As you guys know, in the past, the Warriors have always been interested in LeBron and acquiring his services. So now is his chance. Draymond opted out. They got some cap space. Obviously, LeBron also doesn't really care about the money. I think he says that he just wants to have fun. So I think the Warriors is definitely going to be a spot. You know, he said to play with his son. He's got that out of the book. I think now it'll be to play with Steph. Now, moving on to the Cavaliers, I think it would probably be more of that storybook ending. Obviously, you know, they're gaining momentum as front runners because of, you know, the storyline essentially. So the narrative obviously would be the full circle retirement tour, ending his 24th year career exactly where it started. And Northeast Ohio is a script Hollywood couldn't even write any better. It would dominate the news cycle. So basketball fit, the Cavs have an elite guard play with Donovan Mitchell. LeBron would add a veteran championship leadership and a playmaking to the team that is built to win now, but has struggled to get over the hump in the playoffs. So obviously, with that LeBron assist, maybe bringing back James Harden, you know, he can help them out. The catch, obviously, the defense is question mark. NBA analysts are already pointing out that the core centered around LeBron and Mitchell would need serious defense reinforcements on the wing to actually survive a deep playoff run. So, that would be one. Now, my last one is with Miami. Now, why I say Miami? Obviously, they just traded for Giannis, as we know. Basketball fit, obviously, LeBron teaming up with Giannis and Bam creates an absolute front court nightmare for the rest of the league. LeBron wouldn't have to carry the primary scoring or on rebounding load. He could operate as the high ultimate IQ factor for the two elite finishers. The narrative obviously is returning to the franchise where he learned how to win his first ring. There is deep established trust with Eric and Pat Riley. The catch obviously is financing, getting Giannis to strip Miami to a fraction of their roster flexibility and depth. Putting LeBron onto that payroll would acquire significant cap gymnastics. And recent reports from insider like Mark suggest Miami's odds are cooling off because of these hurdles. So looks like Miami's having some struggles with financial situation, it looks like. So they're saying, you know, the chances of this one happening could be slim. But right now, I point those three teams out. Now, obviously, shoot, if LeBron decides to go to Philly, obviously that would be a scary ass team. You know, you got Max, you got Joel, you got Jaylen Brown. That would be a good ass team. Obviously, the question would be is if this gentleman Joel can stay healthy. Because if they do, I think Philly would be very favored to win the title. I can't even hold you. That would be a great team. But hey, that's going to be my prediction. Let's see what ends up happening. Now, continuing on a little bit with Philly, we're going to talk about the blockbuster trade sending Jaylen Brown to the Phillies, and one of the interesting trades this offseason. So let me break it down to you guys. So the 76ers acquired Jaylen Brown and his services. Philly sending back to the Celtics Paul George, a first round pick, 2028 swap, 2031 first round pick unprotected, 2 second round picks, 2028 and 2030. So start off with the Sixers. Sixers front office pulled off a masterclass. They flipped a aging Paul George who only played 37 games last season into a 29 in his prime, coming off his best season with 28.7 points per game, 6.9 rebounds, and 5.1 assists. So the fit, obviously, you know, you got Maxi, Joel, even VG in the mix. becoming a terrorizing offensive trio. As Carmelo Anthony recently pointed out, this takes a massive amount of regular season pressure off of Embiid's body. He can finally afford to be the third option on certain nights, while Brown and Maxey carry the load. So listen, this is going to be a nasty team. That is true. But it's also going to take one of those questions of what is Joel going to bring to the table? He's been very injury prone. You know, we obviously know how he is in the playoffs. That will be the ultimate question because if he stays healthy, this team can have a chance, even them three only, to make it far in the playoffs. Um, Obviously, the drama, you know, the clip where you know Celtics blew a 3-1 lead, game lost the game or to Philly in the playoffs. Brown went live and called Embiid a flopper. So you know, listen, he wasn't lying, you know, but it is what it is. It's one of those things. If it is what it is, I think they'll squash it because he also said in that same conversation that Joel is one of the best big men in the league. With Boston, it was very interesting because one, they traded in the division. They gave up, if not their best or second best player on the team. So you trade him for an aging Paul George who barely can stay on the field on the court. It's one of those like it don't make sense. So um they traded one of their cornerstones to a direct division rival. Um the roster risk, obviously, you traded for a guy who you know, you traded a guy who carried you, and now you have, you know, Jason Tatum coming back who's recovering from a torn Achilles. In return, you're getting a 36-year-old Paul George who carries a massive injury risk and just signed free agents like Mitchell Robinson and Mike Conley to try and hold the roster together. Um, it was very interesting to me. I really don't understand. I think so. A lot of the things that was talked about was that situation of, you know, the simple to put it, Boston just wasn't a fan of Jaylen. That's all it was. I think they looked at Jason Tatum as their number one guy. And it was one of those things of like, they wanted all the shine on him. They wanted to put all the eggs on his basket. And obviously, because Jaylen Brown was there and he was being consistent, they had to put a little bit of the eggs into his basket. And they didn't want to do that. Um, because you can tell they were trying their best to just get rid of him to whoever, because you literally you sent him to a direct rival, and then the stuff you got back, like you got Paul George, who isn't probably going to do good for you at all. Um, Boston is still going to be a good team, but there's probably going to be other teams in the East that are going to be better than, like the Knicks right now. I would say is better than them. The Philly is better than them. I was going to say the Phillies. Um, Toronto looks like they're trying to get better, trading for Kawhi. And Miami, you know, is gonna figure it out. So it's like the Cavs as well. I don't know. I don't like the trade. I think Boston just did it out of a necessity. Obviously trading that, yeah, I think it was to get rid of that contract that he has where he's still owed over $142 million. But at the same time, it was one of those things of like, they were a good duo. Why separate that? Like it obviously feels like there was something else behind doors that we just don't know about that eventually will probably get knocked down. Because it just doesn't make sense to me. Like you get rid of a guy who carried you guys all year long while, you know, JT was out, and now you trade him for, you know, some nonsense. It really doesn't make sense to me. Um Now obviously they got roster depth, you know, they got a little bit more, you know, depth around the court. Jason Tatum is going to have a lot of work to do. I think this is going to be his time where he has to prove his, you know, his worth. Because now every eyeball is going to be on him. Now he don't have JB who can, you know, shine away that light a little bit. Now it's all you. So I think it'll be interesting. Obviously, he's going to be returning now fully healthy, hopefully. And let's see how he performs from that, you know, teared Achilles, because that will be interesting. Now continuing on a little bit with some trades, as you guys know, I mentioned Toronto. Um, Clippers traded Kawhi back to Toronto, you guys. So Just a few days after Jaylen Brown was traded, um, Kawhi is heading back to Toronto for Clipper. Or so essentially, Clippers send Kawhi. Raptors are sending to the Clippers Brennan Ingram, Grady Deck, 2031 first round pick, 2033 first round pick, 2027 first round pick swap, and two second round picks, 2030 and 2033. So why are the Raptors all in? Why are they going and trying to get better? So obviously the East is starting to get stacked. You got Miami with Giannis, you got Philly with Jaylen. Obviously the defense, the Raptors already won 46 games last year by building around a defense, securing the number 5 seed. Now pairing up a two-time defensive player in Kawhi alongside Scott Barnes in the front with RJ Barrett and Emmanuel on the perimeter creates an absolute nightmare for opposing offenses. So they obviously wanted to prove the defense and felt like with Kawhi, he would make them better. Obviously, he also bolsters up the offense. While they gave up Brandon Ingram, Kawhi's coming off his best offensive season of his career, averaging 27 points per game and shooting 38.7% from the deep. He gives them an elite, reliable bucket getter that they needed for a deep playoff run. Also, financial commitment. Toronto isn't viewing this as a one-year rental like 2019. Raptors include they are already pairing an offer to Kawhi a massive 2-year extension worth roughly around 124 million to lock him out through the 2028-2029 season once the trade becomes official July 6th. So it becomes official today. Why the Clippers pull the plug? Clippers finally realized that Kawhi's era in LA had hit a ceiling and they refused to pay the price tag to keep him on an aging roster. Obviously, the money, the Clippers simply weren't willing to commit that $126 million extension to an aging Kawhi with a long history of knee issues. The return, obviously, getting back a 26-year-old All-Star Brandon Ingram and a promising young shooter, gives the Clippers an ultimate talent while restocking their empty draft cabinet with unprotected picks. Draft lottery, next 2026 or 2027 Clippers first round pick is suddenly very interesting with Kawhi gone. If the Clippers struggle, that pick swap they gave up could have a major lottery. And so Toronto obviously wanted to get better. I think that was the way they were looking at it. I think they know Kawhi. How could I put it? They know Kawhi. They know what he brings. They understand his body. They know that he can be an offensive threat. They know he could play good defense. I would say for the Raptors, that was a good trade. Now you got to worry about, like I said, his knees. You got to worry about his injuries. You got to you got to figure out how to balance out that situation. They won 46 games last year. They're trying to improve and get better. Because they obviously saying that every other team in their league or in their conference is getting better. Where something that I thought about when I got this notification about this trade was, what is LA doing? The Clippers in specific. Like, I'm trying to think about what are they doing? They weren't in trade rumors for Giannis. They're not in rumors for LeBron. They didn't want Jaylen Brown or not even John Morant. My question is, what is the plan? Like, what is the vision with the Clippers? Because you made that arena not too long ago. That arena is brand new, and you have nobody really on that roster that's going to put asses in seats. Just to put it very simple like that. You gave up now your star player in Kawhi. What is the vision? Because you obviously, especially as an owner looking down in a business standpoint, you obviously want to make money back from what you may have spent all that for the arena. But the way things are looking right now, it don't look like you guys are going down that direction. Yeah, you got Brandon Ingram, but Brandon Ingram is not going to put asses in seats. And then you got the Lakers right down the street with Luka, Austin Reeves. Like, what's the vision? Like, I'm trying to understand what they're gonna plan on doing. Because obviously now it's gonna be a rebuilding phase, but that's gonna take time. And the owner obviously is gonna get frustrated because he wants to make his money back from all the money he invested in the arena. So, like, what's the vision? I'm trying to understand that because you gave up James Harden, I think, last year. You gave up James Harden. Now you give up Kawhi. What's the vision? Like, I don't personally understand what they got looking forward to because they're gonna be okay this year. They're not gonna do anything, honestly. The Raptors, I like that trade for them. I think that will be good for you know getting better. Obviously, just getting better and developing, continuing on. You won a couple games. Now you got a great player in Kawhi. I think that's good. All right, so let's move on. Let's take a pause from my sports talks, you guys. Let's talk about my sports underdog sports picks for today, you guys. So, like I say every time, please bet responsibly. Don't do no foolishness, no nonsense, no shenanigans. Thank you. Here's my picks for today, you guys. So I have Cam Schlittler, who is going up against the Tampa Bay Rays. I have him higher than 4.5 strikeouts. Cam has been one of the best pitchers in baseball now. Even though he struggled against Boston, I think he's going to come back and do well. I also have Griffin Jax, who's going up against the Yankees. I think he will face more than four batters in the first inning. Renato Lopez, who's going up against the division rival, the Mets. I think he'll have more than two walks for sure allowed. And then my last one, Francisco Lindor, who's going up against Lopez and the Braves. I think he's going to strike out more than at least once. So go higher on that. That is my sports fix for today. Please bet responsibly. All right, so let's get into my favorite sport and talk about my favorite team for a little bit, and then we'll also talk about other teams and all that, etc., etc. So let's have let me let's start off with this one because this one was very interesting. So we're gonna talk about Eric Chavez and former Mets hitting coach, you guys, and I want to talk about what he discussed. I'm gonna put it like this: he basically broke down the tea of what's going on in the front office and backstage, just to word it like that, which is the locker room, the clubhouse, etc. So let's break it down, and then I'm gonna give you guys my thoughts. So, um, the former New York Mets hitting coach, Eric Chavez, just dropped an absolute nuclear bomb on the organization. He released an emergency episode of his EC3 podcast and then went on a massive media tour, including a heavy critical appearance on foul territory to completely pull back the curtain on the disaster happening in Queens. If you are looking for a pure or drama to break down, this is Chavez, especially blah 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 blah. So, I'm gonna give you guys some points of what he spoke about on the podcast. I'll also give you guys some quotes. So, let's start off with the situation between Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor in the clubhouse. So, Chavez dropped a massive story about how superstar Juan Soto has handled his first few months with the Mets. According to Chavez, Soto would routinely avoid the dugout entirely during the games, instead of retreating to the clubhouse to sit on the couch near the hitting coaches. Chavez didn't hold back, calling out a complete lack of leadership and accountability from the top down for letting it happen. He also confirmed rumors of a growing tense fracture in the clubhouse between Soto and franchise cornerstone Lindor over how the team is being run. That was one thing. Another thing he spoke about was defending Carlos Mendoza and crushing David Stearns. Chavez is furious about Carlos Mendoza being fired, calling him a scapegoat. His main thing is that managers and coaches are consistently taking the fall for the front office highly questionable roster construction. Chavez blasted Stearns, heavily reliant on analytics at the expense of experienced baseball people. He openly questioned Stearns' qualifications and argued that the front office has built a flawed roster. Expected expected a manager to spin gold out of it, and then axed Mendoza when the analytics failed to transition to wins. The front office lack accountability is another point he touched on. Chavez painted a picture of a deeply dysfunctional Mets organization where the coaching staff is completely aligned from decision making. He threw a surprising amount of support behind former GM Billy Epler while criticizing the current environment under Stearns and owner Steve Cohen, claiming that there is zero alignment between the people data crunching in the front office and the guys actually managing the locker room. Chavez even went as far as to say that given the current state of the roster and internal dysfunction, the Mets need to wave the white flag and become hard sellers at the upcoming trade deadline. So, some quotes he said from his appearance on the foul territory, David Stearns situation. He said he heavily questioned whether Stearns actually deserved the power and money Steve Cohen handed him to run the organization, pointing out the lack of tangible success. Here's some quotes he said about David Stearns. David got a huge contract. Great. Awesome. And it's like, well, hold on a second. What has he accomplished to deserve that contract other than we heard that the guy is really smart, question mark. But what have you accomplished in this game, question mark. David got tabbed pretty early and is extremely smart, but there has just been a whole stack of moves that have gone wrong. On the overuse of analytics, Chavez went on a rant about the front office are ignoring baseball antics to strictly follow data crunchers and how coaches are getting fired when the data doesn't translate to the field. I'm over analytics. Not saying we need to get rid of it, but we need to put it in its place. How many good baseball people are going to continue losing their jobs while we're kind of waiting for you to deliver what everybody else said you could deliver, question mark. His quotes on his defense of Carlos Mendoza. Carlos was kind of odd man out of this time. The odd man out this time. Pretty predictable that this was eventually going to happen. ... Carlos is a good baseball man. I hate to see it happen. If you make a substitute changes, you don't make a household changes. I think that's really backfired. This is just me in defense of Carlos. What a good baseball person he was. I enjoyed my time working with him, and I knew he's going to land on his feet again in a big league job. Juan Soto situation. If you address the best player on the team, nobody else has an excuse to do anything else. When clarifying his talk. So essentially, one of the main points that caught people's attention on that podcast with Eric was when he spoke about how Juan Soto, the first couple months when he was with the Mets, every time throughout between innings or after he'd hit something like that, when the Mets were in the dugout, instead of being with his teammates, he would go sit with the assistant GM and near the batting cage, some shit like that. So let me think, how am I gonna address this? Because let me start off with Eric, because obviously Steve Cohen had some comments and all that. We'll go after that. So let's start off with Juan Soto. Obviously, also one thing that he mentioned was that when it was brought up to David Stearns, how that's not a good look, for a leader. And it's not a good look for the young players coming up. The response he got from David Stearns was, well, they're not Juan Soto. So let me start off with that. Listen, if you're a superstar in this league, if you're great, if you bring money, if you generate revenue, some things are going to get pushed under the rug. We're just going to keep it real, keep it straight up. It's like that in any kind of job, any kind of business job where it's sales involved and all that, etc. If you bring in money, if you bring in the top people money, they don't give a damn what you do. As long as it continues, they don't care. Let's just keep it real. That's how it is. Um, Now, obviously, I'm going to start off with this. Obviously, that's not acceptable. It don't matter. Oh, that he's Juan Soto and all that, etc. Okay, that doesn't matter. He's supposed to be a leader. You can't just do that. Where you go in the first couple months and you're just, instead of being with your teammates trying to build that chemistry, you're in the dugout doing some shenanigans. That's not acceptable. Um, Now with Lindor and Soto situation, obviously that's between them. That's private, whatever they want. Now we've seen that they speak to each other, they're best friends. It's like Juan Soto said, which he spoke about. You're not going to kiss the girl right away. That's the quote that he said. It is what it is. That's their business. If they didn't want to be best friends off the jump, it is what it is. Now, where I 100% agree with Eric Chavez was on the situation with David Stearns. And when I listened to this podcast, and you're basically as a fan getting information or you're getting information on how things are going backstage, because obviously they're backstage, so us as a fan, we're not going to know. We're only going to know what the reporters say, and we're only going to know what happens on the field or on TV. So when I listen to that, here's what it sounds like. It sounds like everything is a mess and nothing is organized. That's what I'm getting from it. It sounds like we have a guy who has now such a big ego because of the amount of money that has been invested into him, that has been put into his pockets, that being David Stearns, where he don't give a shit what you tell him. He's going to be one of those people that he's going to just tell you, get the fuck out, and that's it. And that's how it comes off. That's what it feels like is going on backstage. I think what's going on is that it's being, everything's being run loose. And the only person that has a say is David Stearns. And it's like, it's exactly what Eric said. You constructed this roster. You're the one that let Pete Alonso walk. You're the one that gave Shamania a long contract. You're the one that had traded for Freddie Peralta, who has a 4 ERA. You let go of Jeremy Hefner. You let go of Anthony. You decided to sign Jorge Polanco, who's been hurt. You traded Acuna for Luis Robert Jr. My point, all these moves that were done was from David Stearns. So it's like he says, he expected Carlos Mendoza to turn stone into gold when it's like what you gave him was trash and you didn't give him any tools to do it. So it sounds like we're relying a lot on analytics instead of trying to also, which honestly, let's be real. A lot of the league now, like the Yankees, Dodgers, I don't know about the Phillies, but a lot of them rely on analytics. But also sometimes you got to be real. You got to keep it straight up. If you know, let's say, for example, if you know Lindor bats really well against Renato Lopez, who he plays today against the Braves, you're going to put him in there. If you know that, you're going to put him in there. But if analytics say, oh, he's 0 for 20, they're not going to go with it. That's how it's basically being ran. But it sounds like it's a shit show. It sounds like nothing is organized. There's no leadership. There's nobody there that you can look up to that is going to help you get better, who you can follow and, work on. And it's just one of those things of like, you hear it time and time and time. The Mets clubhouse is a dysfunction in the back. Yeah, you've heard players just don't. It feels like it's a dysfunction. It feels like there's no organization. There's nothing organized from top to bottom. I feel like you got a guy that has a big ego now who is just going to do whatever the fuck he wants because he got the king of the castle. And it's like he don't care at all, which is David Stearns. And I think it's one of those things of, sadly you can't do nothing about it. But honestly, this team is a shit show overall. I'm very upset with how things have been running. This pitching staff is an embarrassment. We seem to just embarrass ourselves game after game. I've been watching both games that they've played the Braves. I saw the one from yesterday on Sunday, and I saw the one from Saturday. And this isn't a complete embarrassment of a team. You got players dropping fly balls. You got players dropping, throws at first base, that being Mark Vientos. You got players just not doing the basic of just calling ball, 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 boom, I'm getting it, get out the way. It's like it's a flat out embarrassment, dude. Like it's sad. We went into the ninth inning, I think it was 10-3 against the Braves, and we finished 10-9. We almost blew that 7-point lead. Is that it? Like, do you think that does that process into people's mind, especially in that front office, like that's good? That's an embarrassment. That's a flat out embarrassment. We gave up a grand slam, and then we were this close to shit in the bed, giving up the lead to the Braves. They had a runner on second and third, I think, with 2 outs. And lucky enough, because you get Devin Williams who comes in, and you just want to shiver and be scared and frightened because this dude is dog shit as well. But lucky enough, he struck out Dom Smith and we won the game, but we almost gave up that lead. That's embarrassing. That is flat out embarrassing. And then Mark Vientos, he got to get the fuck up on, man. I got to be honest. And I'm going to say it just like that. He got to go. This dude is fucking dog shit, dude. He can't, I don't know. Why do we keep putting him out at first base? He sucks. Defensively, this dude's an embarrassment, dude. There was like 2 or 3 plays thrown at him to first from a pickoff, and he missed it. It was sent all the way almost to right field in the corner. What the fuck is that? You throw the ball to him. Sometimes he drops it right in front of him. What the hell are you doing, bro? You're in the major leagues, dude. You cannot be making mistakes like that. That's very crucial. His ass got to go. Like, his ass got to be at the top of the trading block. Because this is an embarrassment, dude. It's like, oh my Jesus, dude, this team is an embarrassment. And then you hear stuff like this from a guy who was backstage, and it's like one of those things of like, you connect the dots together and now everything makes sense. This team is a shit show right now. David Stearns has a freaking ego, and he's going to do whatever the hell he wants, and he don't give a damn what people say. That's exactly what it is. And it's either you do it by his way or he's going to let your ass go and he don't give a shit. That's what it is. That's exactly how this team is running right now. That's why it's going down a hole where the Marlins and the Nationals are doing better than us. And we're doing bad like the freaking Red Sox. And we have a $300 million payroll, and we're doing as bad as the Red Sox to the Reds. Like, what the hell is this, bro? So then we got Steve Cohen, who goes on a podcast with Joe Sherman and John Heyman addressing the question, where he basically goes in and he's defending David Stearns and dismissing Chavez, basically. So, let's break that down. So, Cohen drew a firm line in the sand regarding David Stearns' job, despite the brutal 36-50 start and firing Carlos. Cohen completely dismissed the idea of shaking up the front office, stating that David is reflective and adaptable. We'll figure out the changes needed to be made, but it won't be David. So he's essentially saying that David won't be gone. He also pushed back on the criticism that Chavez gave Stearns, saying that Stearns didn't earn his contract. Reminding listeners about the Mets' deep playoff run 2 years ago in 2024. Says that Chavez comments about the organization heavily reliance on analytics and lack of leadership. Cohen reportedly offered a quick dismissive no comment when asked directly by reporters through sports media personality. Also, the Soto and Lindor dynamic, Cohen shied away from it, addressing the report. He says, I believe strongly that these guys are getting along much better. I just don't see that there's an issue anymore. So there was an issue, essentially. I'm lucky enough to have 2 high quality players like that. So bottom line with the Mets from Cohen, It looks like he's made it clear that there won't be no full scale teardown in front office. Superstars core isn't blowing up. That he's not basically going to trade those two gentlemen. And he burned the charm. He says, he basically was defending David Stearns. He said it's a mixed record. I'm not going to say it's doing great, but it's too early to really make evaluations. And I really feel strong that if we're going to burn and churn, that's a terrible place to be. Every time you burn and churn, guess what? The next time nobody wants to come. It's is going to put their career in your hands if you're going to be short term orientated. So, his thoughts on David Stearns, he said the same nonsense. Roster construction. Steve. So Cohen basically went on this podcast and defended David Stearns. Obviously, it's one of those things of like, obviously, because guess what? If I go on this podcast and I go off on David Stearns, I'm gonna look like an idiot because I was the one that brought him in. I was the one that was desperate, and I gave him all the money in the world to come in. So why am I gonna make this dude look like shit if I'm the one that made him? I brought him in. Because if I make him look like shit, then I look like shit because I was the one that did it. I'm responsible for this. So obviously he was gonna do that. I'm not happy with the mindset that Steve Cohen has because it's one of those things of like, my guy, you're the same gentleman that came in and said that if in 5 years you didn't win a championship and bring a championship to the Mets, it's an automatic failure. This is a failure. We're in like year 6 now, and this team is an embarrassment. We didn't make the playoffs last year, and we're in dead last right now. Forget that 2024. That's in the past now. We got to look forward. And we're trying to get better, but what we do is we just play like shit. We make trash decisions that don't make sense. And we do stuff that just doesn't add up. Why the hell we let go of Pete Alonso? Why did we let him go? Because of some stupid contract at the last 4 or 5 years of his contract, the back end? Who gives a shit? Who cares? Now you let him walk, and you got Mark Vientos, who's just fucking trash on offense and defense. You got your first baseman who you're signed, who's been on the IL now for who knows how long. Who knows when the hell he's going to come back. You got Devin Williams. You signed Devin Williams when you know that he sucked with the Yankees, and now he's trash. You traded prospects for Freddy Peralta, who is doing trash. Who wants an extension of a long contract, who you don't give long contracts to because you don't like giving long contracts to pitchers, which doesn't make sense. So it's becoming one of those things of like, what the hell, man? What the hell? Like, this team is doing bad. Horrible, horrible, horrible. And just hearing what Chavez said, it just makes even more sense of why this team's an embarrassment. Because there's no direction. There's no organization. Everything is whatever Dave Stearns says, and he don't give a shit what you say. He's just going to fire you. Because now he has such a built-up ego from Steve Cohen's, great, kissing his ass, essentially. And giving him all that money now. David Stearns simply hasn't done a good job. At all. Last year, when he made those trade deadline moves, getting, Ryan Hatsley and Gregory Soto, they went to shit. None of those players are on the team anymore. And they didn't do good at all. So now you go into it. Now we're sellers at the deadline. The deadline is in a couple weeks. We're not going to get better. Especially when we're giving up a 10-3 lead to our division rival, the Braves, who are in first place. So it's just like, we got to get rid of Freddie. We got to get rid of Mark. We got to get rid of Sean Manaea. We got to get rid of, Clay Holmes when he comes back, if he comes back healthy. Because we're going to need players. We're going to have to get into that selling mode again. which is embarrassing because this is a New York team and we're playing like dog shit. Literally. But man, this is sad. I can't even lie to you. Now continuing on a little bit, Tarek Schoolball trade watch, you guys. So the Tigers are currently sitting at a 37-49 record as of July 1st. They are buried in the standings, well out of the wild card picture. So it looks like they're probably going to get rid of, or they're probably going to trade Tarek Schoolball, and let him walk. So current front runners is being reported. The Atlanta Braves are the front runners for him, to add depth to the rotation. Contenders that are in the mix is Milwaukee, the Phillies, the Padres, the Cubs, the Rays, the Red Sox, which I don't see why where the Red Sox would be. Likely out are the Yankees and Dodgers. Obviously, probably the Mets too. Just because they probably won't want to give that money. Right now, probably the favorites are the Braves. Why I see the Braves is because they're playing good. They're in first place. They obviously want to improve that rotation going into the playoffs. They have prospects who they could give up and send to the Tigers to help them out a little bit. So one of these days, I'm going to sit down when it gets closer to the deadline and we're going to break it down. Right now, I think my favorites are the Braves, though, for them. But let's end it off with Mr. Jazz Chisholm Jr., you guys. I was going to speak about it last week and I forgot. But let's talk about it. So this gentleman here had a bit of has caused a bit of some havoc with the Yankees. As you guys know, on June 22nd against the Tigers, he had that situation with the lollipop in his mouth in the 5th inning. I don't know, man. Jazz, it like this is one of those things of like. So he came out at the beginning of the year and said that he wants a 10-year contract worth $35 million. Jazz is not going to get that contract, you guys. I'm sorry. Like the most I could see him getting is like a 2-year, 3-year deal kind of stuff. If I got to keep it real. Like I genuinely don't see him getting a contract more than that. I really don't. Because it's just like teams don't like nonsense like this. Owners do not like nonsense like this, shenanigans like this. And what he's doing is he's digging up a bigger hole for himself where he's not going to get the money he wants. It's just the things he does is very irritating to some people. People don't like it. I think, you have a lot of these old cats that probably didn't like him having a blow pop in the bottom of the 5th inning. Obviously Boone said that it pissed him off, but then he goes on the next day and is, the lollipop kid. What are you doing? Like what? Jazz, come on, man. Just lock in, bro. That's all I'm going to say is just lock in. You're going to be a free agent. I know it's going to be rough because you don't know what's going on, but just lock in, man. You're in a good organization. Just tee up. Do what you got to do, and that's it. But I'm going to wrap it up here, you guys. Thank you guys all for watching. I will be back next week, maybe. We'll see. Thank you guys all for watching. Like I say every time, stay humble, stay blessed, stay positive, and I will see you guys in the next one.